Right, so I'm on the servers page of the management server, and the default states for things straight after a programming of the firmware. We can see that the ESCOM Alpaca Server currently is disabled, so I'm going to enable it and I'm going to start it. The web server also is disabled and stopped, so I'm going to enable it and I'm going to start it. And if I now go to this is the address for the web server because it's got no port, it's got no colon 6060, so it's using port 80. And you can see that these are all what the home page of the web server actually looks like. So it's got most of the information there for you. You've got a move page and you've got a presets page where you can set presets and go to, and of course you've got a home page which lists the values of various settings for the controller. So the next page here is duck DNS, which I'm actually not using at present, and the over there updating. I think because I specified that in the firmware when it was compiled and uploaded, over status of running, I've also got a username and password. I've just set it to the same username and password as the management server to make it easier. And identifier on the page, that the update page for OTA, I've provided a link here, and if you click this link, right, so Elegant OTA, to upload the firmware, choose this, choose the file, and it will upload the data sketch files as the file system. So you choose that option, then browse, locate the file and upload again. So this is the identifier that I talked about, that identifies that this update page belongs to the myFP2ESP32. So that's update. Next would be the motor, and you've seen that, that's all there. This is the Backlash tab where you set all the settings for Backlash. If you're having the client that you're using to control the focuser, if that's got Backlash in it, then what you need to do is you need to disable this on the actual controller itself. The home position switch, currently it is a disabled state. If I've got one fitted, I can enable it, and I can also view its status all the time by refreshing this page. And of course, if you're using the TMC chips, especially the 2209, you need to specify what option you're using for stall guard. Input devices, this is the default state because IRRemote was not specified by me in the configuration file when I programmed the firmware. It's always has a status stopped. Otherwise it should say running. The in-out leads, if I wanted to have those fitted to the controller, then I would enable them simply by pressing the enable switch. You get a choice of joystick, 1, 2 or push buttons. So if I'm using a joystick, I can enable it just like this. Next we have the display settings, and normally the display, even if you enable it in the controller config file when you program the controller, you need to come in here, you need to enable it, and then you need to start it, and then the display works. And you only have to do that one time because, as I said, all these settings get remembered. The temperature probe is normally disabled and stopped, so if you've got one fitted, this is where you enable it and then you start it, and again that information is remembered, and you only have to do that once. The miscellaneous page, these are where all the settings for the web page is, and the device name. This is the device name here, so if you wanted to change it, you could come in here and you could change it. Just let me do that, there we go. And of course I'm running as a station. So let's talk now about the controller config files. And first up, let me talk about controller config.sys, which holds all the vast majority of settings for the controller. And here it is. Tells me what max steps is, what the values of the presets, ESCOM enabled, ESCOM port, management enabled, management port, and so on, as well as Backlash. Here you can see information about the temperature coefficients, the temperature probe resolution, what direction temp comp is applied to, whether temp comp is available, and so web pages here. So this is very important in troubleshooting, to actually understand what's going on and why things are not working the same way. For example, you might think that the ESCOM server wasn't running, and if that happens to be the case, this tells me here that it's actually not enabled at all. So that's the first controller file. The next one, which is this one, let's just do this again here. And this file holds the focuser position and the direction of the last focuser move. So it was either in or out. And that's important because it makes the firmware aware of whether or not to apply Backlash or not. And the last one, is not that, here we go, is the board configuration file. Right, so every single board that we use has got a number associated with it, the board number being 44. There is a file here underneath in the boards folder underneath data, 44 JSON file, and this specifies all the default settings for a Pro ESP32 DOV8825. So that explains where all the other remaining information comes from. So this file is generated basically one time only on a controller reboot following a firmware update. So that's the only time that the board's actually generated. And that contains, as I said, all the settings for the board. If the option steps per revolution is set to -1 here, that indicates that that option, steps per rev, is not used, is not considered for this particular board. And if we were to have a look at another one, let me just forget that and go out and have a look at like 49. This is a R2 WeMOS board, and you can see a whole lot of -1s here. Yes, it does have the fixed modes because there's a off-board chip which is wired on a little board holding just a single DOV8825. The board pins are not used, the step is not used, no IR pin, no push buttons, and no in-out LEDs, no home position switch, and so on. So that's where all the board information comes from, and as I said, only ever generated once. Right, so in the next video I'll talk about all the ESCOM side. So what we do is we'll go through the Alpaca Server and how to set it up and configure it, and we'll use a dynamic client on the fly to access the server. And then we'll look at, if you want to use a ESCOM driver as a standalone machine, etc., then using the ESCOM drivers, how to get that basically up and running.